In the first 2 years, right, the Wall Street Journal won a Pulitzer Prize, as you mentioned, for its coverage of Falun Gong. And even the Washington Post had turned out a couple of pieces that were groundbreaking in terms of uncovering the fact that Falun Gong were being tortured and killed widespread in China. And then it all disappeared. Why did that happen? Well, I think there's a couple things to look at. And first of all, it's not for lack of evidence. If you look at the NGOs and the government entities that are responsible for documenting human rights abuses, including the Department of State and the United Nations, including Freedom House, Amnesty, year after year, every single year, cases of Falun Gong being persecuted, tortured, killed inside China are there. So the evidence is there. So it can't be that. So why the silence? I think the full answer is, I don't know. What we could do is look at what we do know. And what we do know, and this is the thing that has changed over the last 15 years, the ownership of most large media companies in the US and in the West in general has significant business ties with China, whether it's the majority owner of the New York Times, Carlos Slim, the billionaire, or it's the corporate ownership of NBCs of the world. There's significant business ties, tens of millions of dollars, in some cases billions. So at the very least, this represents a significant and obvious conflict of interest to report accurately and fairly about Falun Gong in China when your ownership has such business ties in China. I think there's also, we can't underestimate the amount of work, I guess you'd call it, that diplomatic missions have done here in the West. There was a high-level diplomat that defected in Sydney, Australia, about 15 years ago, and one of the things he brought with him was a bunch of documents that showed that the CCP was actually using their missions to influence our politicians, our businesses, our communities to marginalize Falun Gong, to ignore Falun Gong, and they did it, in some cases, it was half of the effort of the entire mission. And so I think it would be hard to overstate how effective that has been in perhaps silencing Western institutions, including media, on covering Falun Gong.